أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum. We'll take a little time today to learn about CAIR and also focus on what the rights are for us as the citizens of this country, as being part of this country, and go into more details on situations that most people deal with when it comes to rights in this country, right? Most of you must be familiar with CAIR. We have been around for a long time. And before I get into CAIR, let me introduce myself. My name is Shakil Rashid. I have been a long time Austin resident. We have, I believe I've been here since 1999 and have seen various masajid, various groups grow here in Austin since that time. Alhamdulillah, the growth in Austin has been good for all of us. It has been good for the Muslim community. It has been good for everybody here in Austin. So alhamdulillah, we have seen that growth. And then going beyond myself, I have been with CAIR since 2017 onwards. Brother Fayyaz, who I'm very old friends with, he invited me to join CAIR after our own masajid, ICLT, Islamic Center of Lake Travis, had an incident where the masjid was completely burned down and we had to restart from the beginning near that. So that prompted me to join CAIR following all the activities that were happening at that time. CAIR, as you know, is Council on American-Islamic Relationship. It is the longest standing civil rights organization that focuses on Muslims, the rights of Muslims. And we proudly defend Islam and the dignity of Muslims in this country, right? And in Texas, it's been around since a very long time. Also, active chapters has been in Dallas, in Houston. Austin was about 2015, 2016 when we started the CAIR chapter here. And we are giving voice to Muslims in various places. We are building bridges with the rest of the community and empowering our youth as part of what we do. Some of the faces that you see here, I'm sure, are familiar to you. And our mission is to protect the civil rights. Key idea here is civil rights, enhance understanding of Islam, promote justice, and empower American Muslims. This is clearly what our mission is, and our vision aligns with that also. We do this based on 5 pillars at CAIR. And the key pillars for us is we defend the civil rights. We are working on government relationship. A lot of us have established relationship with whether it's city officials, whether it is the legislative officials, all the way through US Congress and further beyond, right? We have done media training for many of the incidents that happen in the Muslim community. So media engagement is actually a very active part of what happens with CAIR. Of course, outreach and education is part of it. Next thing that is very important to CAIR is youth empowerment. We have been doing a lot of leadership classes for the youth. I'm sure Sister Saima has gone through those here at ICBC and several other places. This is the CAIR's impact in 2022. This is nationwide. We have had more than 6,000 complaints. Of course, we don't want to see the increase, but it's 9% more in 2022 than 2021. We have been involved. 29% of these were immigration issues. Complaints directly to headquarters were about 1,500. 142 clients in litigation, and around 219,001 for national clients all over, right? This is just for civil rights. And in Austin, we are doing all of this with very limited, lean staff. The only person that we have on our staff right now is Sister Shema Zayan, who's taken up outreach work for us. And we are doing this very lean, mainly because of the fact that it's very tough to raise funds for this work. It's absolutely something that we find it very difficult overall. Right now, we just have one person, but we do have a lot of work that is supported by various board members, various volunteers that do that part. Now to the main part of what we came here to talk about, right? This is knowing what your rights are, right? As we all know, in our Constitution in the United States, this is a key declaration saying we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, of course they said men at that time, which also includes men and women, are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator for certain unalienable rights, right? That among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. This is the rights we are talking about. We've, at least some of us have grown in countries where these rights were not obvious for us. Some of us grew up in places where you were told, okay, you can let go of some of these things, right? You don't have to show off from your identity and everything else. So the 4 areas that we will cover, which is very valid for all of us as part of our rights, is right as an employee, right? Most of us are employed, or we run our own businesses and we employ other people, right? So rights of an employee is very important as being part of the identity that we hold. Rights while traveling. This is a very important fact that most of us travel for work, travel for business, travel for vacations, travel to visit family, travel for doing pilgrimages, umrah, etc., right? So we all going to travel. And then you have law enforcement and FBI. If you're stopped by law enforcement, if you're stopped by FBI, what are your rights in those scenarios? And of course, many of our kids are in colleges and schools, so what are your rights as a student? So we'll cover each of these. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them. This is where it should be interactive. And if you have any situations or any questions specific to your cases, we can discuss those more later on how you can contact CAIR and everything else. But if you have a specific question, feel free to stop and ask. So rights as an employee. I started working in New York area in 1993. 1993 time frame, it was like, again, I was new to this country, not so much in terms of being able to figure out who does what in this country, right? Work in New York area, most of us wore suit and ties to work. Most of us, right? And then one of our groups, DBA, one of our DBAs actually, he would come in a suit tie, but a proper yarmulke, the Jewish cap, and with his long side hair all the time. And I would think like, this is interesting. Like we don't see Muslims doing that, but somebody who's grown up here, a Hasidic Jew at that time, seems to be very comfortable with it, and nobody minds it, right? Nobody has any issues with it. I was like, okay, this is actually good, right? Now, 30 years later, we are seeing the person that covers White House for National Public Radio is Asma Khalid. I don't know if you guys hear National Public Radio, right? Asma Khalid is a hijab-wearing, practicing Muslim mother, And she is the White House correspondent for for National Public Radio, right? This would not have been imaginable 30 years back, that a hijabi young mother is representing in the White House as part of that. So why do I bring these up? These are all rights that we have as part of being Muslims, right? So when you are having an identity, a reasonable religious accommodation is allowed at any workspace, okay? The key idea here is reasonable is the key idea, right? You can't say, okay, I am just going to take Friday off completely because on Friday I have to go for Jummah prayers, right? If your contract is with the employer that you're going to work on Fridays, you're going to work on Fridays, but you will be allowed to go for prayers at certain times. Again, going back to my New York example, even 30 years back, that's what we used to do. We used to make sure that all of us who were Muslims within that group, we would actually go out, go to namaz, come back, and nobody had any issues with that, right? That's, again, a reasonable religious accommodation. So the failure of an employer to reasonably accommodate your religious practices may constitute employment discrimination. This is, again, a key word here is employment discrimination. And religious practices include prayers, breaking of fast, wearing beard or hijab, going to Jummah prayers, going for Hajj. All of these constitute as part of your religious duties, and you have the ability to take the time off or follow those examples as you do them, right? This is, again, your identity, your basic idea that this is what I am doing is perfectly fine. Recently, actually, I went to Indeed office here in Austin, and one person was wearing a Scottish kilt on a t-shirt to work, and I saw somebody in an Indian dress also there, right? So it's like we have come a long way since the time that, that these things have been happening, so you are accepted in the workplace as you are. And anything that is based on who you are, if you are being discriminated at work based on who you are as your identity, as the religion that you follow, right? Those constitute under employment discrimination. And if we are affected, we have the ability to raise that, right? And the idea is, since we are now employing a lot of people, they also have that same right in terms of all of these things. And again, if people create a hostile environment at work based on your identity, me being a Muslim, okay, and other people are basically not keeping me in the loop or giving better promotions to people even though you deserve it, right? Those are things that can be considered as hostile work environments. And these are cases that CAIR has helped with. We get several cases like this, including from universities. You wouldn't think that universities are safe spaces, but a number of cases that we get are from universities where people feel they're being discriminated against because they're Muslim. This one is something really important because we all have traveled a lot. A number of times, especially at the airports, you go through a lot of scrutiny, right? And it's always explained that you have been selected for random reasons. It's a random selection that you have been taken for an extra check, right? So again, what is your right as an airline passenger? You are entitled to a courteous, respectful, and non-stigmatizing treatment by the airline and the security personnel, right? They are doing their job. They are basically doing their job, but within their job, they cannot treat one person one way and looking at you with a long beard or wearing a different dress, they can't treat you in a different way, right? It's illegal for law enforcement officials to perform any stops, searches, detentions, and removals based solely on race, religion, national identity, sex, and ethnicity, right? This is key. If they are giving you trouble because you look different, you follow a different religion, or you have a different ethnicity from them. Now, of course, there are cases where you may not be, there are people who may not be able to speak the language, but even there, they can find somebody who can help them translate instead of being rude or being stigmatizing, as this thing says, right? So what do you do if you feel discriminated? This is another case that CAIR Dallas recently dealt with, where we had two sisters, one hijabi, one non-hijabi, in an airline as passengers. And they felt they were being treated differently just because of the presence of hijab, right? So, by the way, many of the things that we talk about, the brunt of it is actually put on our sisters more, because there is a very clear sign of hijab versus no hijab, right? Me walking around as I am in my regular clothes and everything else is no different to a lot of people. I could be a Hindu, I could be somebody else, it doesn't matter. So it's not like, but for our sisters, because of the hijab, it's a very clear distinction, right? And some people may not feel comfortable about it, but this is not France. USA is not France. We have rights here. There is there's no policies against display of religious identity, right? So what do you do if you feel discriminated? This is specifically for travel situations. This is very specific to travel situations. You document the information as much as possible, right? And what does documenting the situation mean? Our memories are always very fickle. People's memories are fickle, right? So the best thing to do if you have been discriminated against is to document, ask politely for the name and ID number of the person involved in the incident. Every airline personnel, every security TSA personnel at our airports, they all, if you ask them for their name and their badge number, they are supposed to oblige to it. They cannot say, no, I'm not giving you that, right? If you ask politely for their name and their badge number, that is a given, right? And please document those. You have the right to ask somebody for their supervisor. If they're giving you trouble, you have the right to ask for a supervisor. Politely asked if you have been singled out because of your name, looks, dress, ethnicity, faith, or national origin, right? In this case, it is based on these identities that we are talking about, and you can ask them specifically if that is the case. Also, if there are any witnesses of the incident around, there's no place here that doesn't have other people in this case. There are cameras these days everywhere. There are other people here everywhere. There are cell phones everywhere. Actually, the idea of smartphones have changed the rights industry completely, right? The idea of law enforcement wearing cameras everywhere has changed the civil rights movement completely on this, right? So now you have the ability to ask witnesses for their names and maybe their contact information. If an incident happens at an airport or within any transportation that you are going through as you are traveling, you can ask for the people who witnessed what you're going through to give their information. They may or may not oblige, but at least it's good for you to have that information. And then immediately write down the situation as it happened. Again, like I emphasized before, our memories are fickle, but we should be able to document the facts as they happened immediately, and that way you have the information written down as it happened. And then, of course, we will provide you the information on how to contact CAIR Austin DFW, and that way you have all of that information. You have the information about the people who discriminated against you. You have the information about the witnesses. Please, yes. We will come to the traffic stop one, yeah. Okay. Is this for interaction with a cop? Yeah. So we'll come to that one. This is, we'll keep this specific to travel. Yeah. At the airport, you are, absolutely. You can turn on your camera and
document. I mean, why to write down and document all that when you can just...
Absolutely. Like I said, the presence of smartphones and the cameras has changed a lot of the things that we used to do even 5 years back, right? Now, absolutely everybody, as soon as something happens, it's not just you, by the way. There are witnesses who will immediately take out their phones and start recording, right? So phones have changed the game. It is like everybody watching over each other now. So people are definitely more aware of the fact that they can get recorded in every way. All the situations that are happening with the so-called Karens happens because of the smartphones and people recording them, right? Go ahead.
One time I was traveling and they have the dog sniffing luggage, and then they brought the dog closer to me, and though I said, like, hey, make sure the dog doesn't touch me because I was about to go pray.
Yeah.
How would you request that, or can you deny that request from them? How can you deal with that situation?
Excellent. Okay, that's actually our next slide. That is exactly our next slide. Because this is again a common situation. This is a common situation where they have employed within customs agents specifically. It's a very tough job that they have as customs agents also, right? So this is the rights of them as customs agent, what they have the ability to ask you for, right? A customs agent has the right to stop and detain and search every person and every item you come in with, right? And screeners have the authority to conduct further check of you and your bags. The pilot, this is another item apart from the agents, the pilot is responsible for all of the people on that plane, right? If the pilot deems that you are a possibility of causing harm to others, the pilot actually has the right to boot you off that flight. But they have to document that fact, right? Now, coming specifically to your question about a dog in the search, right? Dogs are employed by custom agents for the capability that they provide. You can tell them, but you cannot enforce them, okay? You, as a passenger, can tell them specifically saying that I will be going out to pray. I would like you to try not to have the dog lick me. I would appreciate that, right? Now, what the officer can do is basically take the dog away from you, but the officer doesn't have total control on the dog. The dog is not a robot, right? So we have to think at that level also for these guys, saying that you have the right to request that, but it's their job to check everything, right? So it's a give and take on something like this. So you do have the ability to respect that, and they have the issue. Now, they cannot let the dog go aggressive on you after you have told them, right? And that you can actually document that incident and report those kind of things. So the key understanding of rights, right? One of the things that I emphasize whenever I talk about rights, I have rights, but so does the other person, right? We have to understand that we as people have our rights as well as other people have their rights. So we cannot enforce our things on them also. So it's a give and take on this. Some of us have been through the situation of no-fly lists and watch lists, right? There was a time when I used to travel a lot for my work, and alhamdulillah, I never had any trouble. I never had any trouble. Now, even that made my wife suspicious at times, saying, they have you on some list, and they know everything about you, so that's why they let you pass through so easily, right? We know people who were on the no-fly list. We know people who used to get into trouble every time they traveled, right? Every time they would get into some random checks and things like that. My brother actually had that trouble because his name was same as one of the people on the watch list I believe he had something to do with smuggling in a specific part in the world, right? So he had that trouble when he would travel, and later on we found that out. Department of Homeland Security actually has a process for you to find out if you are on any specific list. This used to not be the case long time ago, but now you have that option that you can check if your name is on a specific list for these things. Law enforcement and FBI. This is actually really very relevant to all of us. This is very relevant to all of us. Now, whenever we see movies of FBI raiding some place or coming into homes, right? You as a person have the right, when an FBI enforcement agent visits you, to do not let them in the house unless law enforcement has a specific warrant. They do not have the right to come in your house. You have the right not to speak to them, okay? It's better not to speak to them if it is something that they are coming out for you, and have a presence of an attorney or a lawyer in those situations, right? The key here is you as a person have rights to refuse to have them enter your home. You can basically not speak to them. You have the ability to ask for an attorney or ask for your lawyer, right? These are things when they come to your place. And if you're stopped by a police, specifically on the road while you're driving, police must have a probable cause. They cannot stop you just because you look different, right? They need a probable cause. Probable cause can be you were speeding, you jumped a light, you were driving erratically. I am known to be not a very good driver. In my trip to Florida once, I thought I was doing everything right. Within no time, I get a cop right behind me saying, you are moving lanes too fast between things. And this is a place which was known for people who are much older who would reside. It's a small town called Punta Gorda. So those are the cases where the law enforcement official needs a probable cause. They cannot just stop you without having any of those things. You do not have to answer questions besides identifying yourself, right? They ask you for a driver's license, they ask you for your insurance, you can hand them that information, sit comfortably in the car, ask the officer if free to leave or being detained. At the end of anything, if they're giving you a ticket, they're giving you a ticket. If they're arresting you or you are free to leave, you have that option to ask in any of these things. Do not physically resist. One of the key things about an interaction with law enforcement, keep yourself at your own place. Do not resist, specifically physically, right? Do not touch the person in any way, shape, or form. It's very important. It's very important to know that anything you do can be used against you in those situations. Do not physically resist officers. You have the right to record. You have the right to record, but not interfere. So one of the things that people do these days very often is as soon as a cop stops you for something, they can basically put the camera on. The cop can actually tell you if it is interfering with their work, they can request you to stop the recording, right? But again, it's your right to be able to record that interaction, and after the fact, get legal help, and you can hold law enforcement accountable. This is very important. In most of the places that we grew up with, at least I did, law enforcement may or may not have been accountable. And we live in that kind of a thinking, but in this case, law enforcement is very much accountable, and if you have had any interactions where they used force or discriminated against you based on how you look, based on your faith, again, it all goes back to the same thing. Based on your overall identity, if you're being discriminated against, it is absolutely necessary to hold them accountable. Now, one of the things that has happened in the last 10, 15 years, this is a change that has happened in the last 10, 15 years. Law enforcement has actively gone out to communities such as ourselves, Muslim communities, Hindu communities, all of those, and have explained this in their places of worship, right? Law enforcement wants to have good community relationships. About 10, 15 years back, we had a chief of police in Austin, Chief Acevedo. He was the first one to invite all the imams from all of our various masajid to the police headquarters and had a meeting there. And I remember during the time that it got to prayers, he reminded us, isn't this your prayer time? We have set up a place for you to go pray and come back for the meeting. Right? So things are different from a lot of ways right now, and we have good relationship with our law enforcement officials too, but even in that regard, we have our rights. If there is a bad apple within their troops and they do something individually, we have our rights to hold them accountable. And this is one of our last ones that we talk about in terms of the rights that we have. And this is actually very important. This is one of the things that I hold really important as part of the rights of students. If you need this deck, we'll pass it over to the brother here, and you can have this. Rights as a student. You have the right to wear religious clothing with religious messages. Again, I will emphasize, we are not France. France actually has a law stating you cannot wear even anything that shows your religious identity. Sikhs are not allowed to wear things there. There are many small things. But in this country, you have the right to wear religious clothing with religious messages. Nobody can stop you from that. You have the right to inform others of your religion, right? We are all in this mode where we are practicing ourselves and we are representing Islam when we are outside of our environments. As a student, I remember during Ramadan, we all fasted. We all told other people what fasting was about. We offered them to join us for iftars. One of my Eids, I even dressed up in a sherwani and walked around the office as part of that, right? So we have the right to inform others about our religion. You have the right to pass out literature and speak to others about Islam, right? Nobody's stopping you from doing things like that. Now, of course, they can take that literature and they have the right to throw it away wherever they want, right? So again, this is the distinction that I want to make sure that we understand. If we are passing pamphlets, right, in a place, they don't have to respect that because it has name of Allah or because Bismillah Rahman Rahim is written on it, right? They can take it and throw it any place they want, right? So that is, again, it comes down to the rights. You have the right to distribute. They have the right to do whatever they want with it, right? It may not be respectful, but they have that right. You have the right to organize student-led programs on campus as long as the service is not disruptive for the function in the school, right? Every school today in the U.S., especially college and above, has a presence of Muslim Students Union, right? Everyone has a Muslim Students Association, and most of these actually have active participation. They have active activities going on all through the year compared to, again, going back 30 plus years back or more, right? So every place has that. You have the ability to do that. Most universities today provide you space for having a prayer room in a union building or all of those kind of things. You may have the right to attend Friday prayers. The Supreme Court has upheld the right of states to allow students. Now, one of the things, by the way, this is something that many of us don't realize, right? In the US, the state's laws apply within those states. And then you have the federal laws at the national level, right? All of the rights that I'm talking about here applies to us in Texas completely. right? They're supported within Texas, they're supported at the federal level also. Some of these may not be all true for some other states as possible, but like it says here, you have the right to attend the Friday prayers. The Supreme Court has upheld that right. I don't know of any state personally, but I can find out which state actually doesn't allow that. But it is possible that there are states that don't allow that, right? You have the right to be excused from school for religious holidays. You have this right that it's Eid, I can be excused from going to that. Teachers accommodate that. Alhamdulillah, in Texas, we are trying to push for a bill which includes religious freedom for everybody. And now that we actually have 2 Muslim representatives in Texas legislation, I'm sure most of you know that, we now have 2 Muslims in the Texas legislation, Salman Bhojani and Dr. Lalani. One from Dallas, one from Houston area. And they are part of the group now pushing for religious freedom, where you actually get optional holidays in Texas for your religious holidays, right? This is pretty important milestone for us here. You have the right to be excused from class discussions or activities that you find religiously objectionable, right? Now, there's a fine line in this, okay? Many of the universities or other institutes that we have here are very open to discuss anything that they want, right? Now, you have the right to walk out of any objectionable material as you see fit. You have the right to form extracurricular Muslim student groups. We already went through that. And you have the right to express political views as long as you do not cause disruption, right? Key again is we have the rights, but we don't have the right to disrupt the rights of other people. Right. This is the information for CAIR Texas. If you have any situations that you need to contact us for, this is our phone number. Our website is cairtexas.org. info@cairtexas.org is our email, which is, again, monitored by Sister Shaima here. So all of this is immediate and available if you need. I have, go ahead. I have a couple more slides on legal and advocacy work that we do, but before that, if you want to ask any questions. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum.
Brother, I have a question about in public places, can we speak in our local language?
Absolutely.
Instead of English?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is where, as a right, you have the right to do that. Now, would it be considered rude by somebody? It might be considered rude. But as a right, you have the right to, I can speak in Hindi, I can speak in Urdu, I can speak whatever is needed, right? Between me and my wife, depending on what we want to do, we jump into Telugu at times, right? So there's nobody who can say you can't speak a local language. Now, it can be considered rude, but right-wise, you have the right.
Thank you, I appreciate for that. And I have another question regarding the first slide, regarding the employment. No, it's okay. It's a general question.
Yeah.
Regarding the employment, whenever if the employer discriminate, at that time, whenever we file any case against that discrimination, what is the action going to be taken against the employer? And then what are the benefits we are going to get from that?
So this is defined case by case in most cases, right? So as an employee, you have the right to complain. you have the right to take it to HR. You have the right, if HR doesn't listen, you have the ability to hire an outside person to represent you for that situation, right? Each situation can be different, and it depends on what has been, what is the discrimination that you are facing. So if we go into specific examples, let's say, for instance, people not being promoted, right? People being treated differently, okay? So those are situations that outside lawyer representing you will be able to advise to you in terms of what are the consequences of that, both for you as well as for your employer, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, Fayaz would like to add more?
Just to add something to that. So obviously it depends upon the specific case and working with your lawyer in your specific case, what are the options? But the results could be that if it was a discriminatory termination, that termination is removed and you're brought back. Or result could be that the person who is doing discrimination is fired,
yeah.
And things like that. But obviously it varies from case to case.
It varies from case. Seattle just recently passed an anti-discrimination based on caste. The Indian system of caste, that's still being used here in the US by people. And Seattle just passed a law saying that they cannot discriminate people based on caste. And I actually used to think this is ridiculous. People are doing that here, but I've actually got specific examples of that out of Bay Area, out of Colorado of all places, and out of Seattle, right? So there are very specific cases where that has happened. So, yeah. I think we are done, alhamdulillah. Did you want to add anything, Sister Shaima? We have Texas Muslim Capital Day coming up on March 7th. If you are not signed up for that, please go ahead and sign, and inshallah we'll see you there.
Just want to add some rights as students. For example, the physical education. You don't have to pull your girls from the physical education. You can always ask for accommodation. Change the outfit a little bit to match our religious requirements, stuff like that. Before just thinking of, avoiding certain activity, think about the accommodation you can ask for. Because most of the time it will be reasonable religious accommodation that the right provide to you, inshallah. And I know Brother Shakil focused on discrimination based on religion or because you are a Muslim, but maybe sometimes you cannot prove that this discrimination was because you are a Muslim, right? But you are a Muslim and you have been discriminated against, so you have the right to contact us, inshallah. And we even sometimes accept cases from non-Muslims who look like Muslims. So they were discriminated against or they were harmed because people think they are Muslims, right? So it could be based on your, race, color, religion. You never know why this discrimination happened. So always contact, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.